The morning alarm bells echoed through the Galactic Council chambers like the death cry of peace itself. Admiral Kethavar's forearms trembled as he read the reports flooding in from the Altair system. 23 worlds under attack. Billions of lives hanging in the balance. The Zephyrian Empire had broken 30 years of peace with the fury of a star-going nova. "How many ships?" asked Council Leader Mordan, her blue skin pale with shock. 3,000 Zephyrian vessels appeared from nowhere, Kethavar replied. Our defense fleets were overwhelmed in the first hour. The word overwhelmed was a gentle way to say completely destroyed. Everyone in the chamber knew it. The Confederation had grown soft during the long peace. Their military forces were designed for show, for keeping small conflicts from growing large. They were not built to face an empire that had spent 3 decades preparing for total war. What about our allies? Morden asked. The Terran Federation? Human ships are still 3 days away, Kethavar said. Standard protocol requires standard protocol. The voice cut through the chamber like a blade. Ambassador Sarah Chen of Earth stepped forward from the human delegation section. She was small compared to most species in the chamber, barely reaching the shoulder of a Kandorian, but something in her voice made every conversation stop. Forgive me, Admiral, Chen said with perfect politeness, but I believe there may be some confusion about standard protocol. Kethavar's mandibles clicked nervously. The Terran Military Assistance Treaty clearly states that human forces require 72 hours notice for deployment authorization. Chen smiled. It was not a warm smile. That treaty covers standard military assistance. This situation appears to require something different. She walked to the center of the chamber with calm, measured steps. Her shoes clicked on the crystal floor like a countdown timer. Every eye in the room followed her movement. The reports indicate the Zephyrians are using biological weapons, Chen said. Weapons specifically designed to target non-human physiology. Weapons that dissolve Kandorian exoskeletons. Weapons that cause Altarian nervous systems to shut down. Weapons that make vegan blood turn to acid inside their bodies. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Several delegates made retching sounds. The use of biological weapons had been banned for over 200 years. It was considered the ultimate violation of civilized warfare. Chen waited for the noise to die down. When she spoke again, her voice was even quieter than before. Such weapons qualify this situation as an extinction-level threat to Confederation member species, she said, which means the Terran Federation is authorized to implement Protocol 7. Silence fell over the chamber like a blanket of snow. No one spoke. No one moved. Even the air recycling system seemed to quiet down. Council Leader Mordan cleared her throat. Ambassador Chen, I'm not familiar with Protocol 7. Most beings aren't, Chen replied. It was written into our membership agreement 30 years ago. A small clause that no one has needed to read since then, until now. She touched a control on her wrist device. A holographic document appeared in the air above the chamber. Thousands of pages of legal text written in dozens of languages. Chen's finger moved, and the display zoomed to a single paragraph buried deep in the middle. In the event of extinction-level threats to Confederation species, the Terran Federation reserves the right to deploy unrestricted military assets for the protection of allied civilizations, Chen read aloud. All previous limitations on Terran military capabilities are suspended until the threat is neutralized. Admiral Kethavar's forearms began to shake harder. What does unrestricted military assets mean? Chen's smile became somehow even less warm. It means, Admiral, that for the past 30 years humanity has been playing by rules we agreed to follow. Not rules we had to follow. The implications hit the chamber like a shockwave. Every species present had assumed that the military limitations placed on humanity after their admission to the Confederation were real restrictions. Laws enforced by superior galactic civilization. But Chen was suggesting something else entirely. You mean the weapons limitation, began Delegate Zeltar of the Proxima Coalition. Were suggestions we chose to accept, Chen finished. The fleet size restrictions were guidelines we decided to respect. The territorial limitations were boundaries we agreed to observe. All of it was voluntary cooperation, not enforced compliance. Another long silence filled the chamber. This time it carried a different quality. Fear was beginning to seep into the air like a cold fog. How long? Asked Council Leader Morden in a whisper. How long until your unrestricted forces can reach Altair? Chen checked her wrist device. The first units should arrive in approximately 6 hours. 6 hours? Kethavar's voice cracked. But you said human ships were 3 days away. I said the ships you know about were 3 days away, Chen corrected. Protocol 7 activates assets that most of you didn't know existed. She walked back toward the human delegation, then paused and turned around. I should mention, she added, that Earth's military command wants me to apologize in advance for any cultural misunderstandings that might arise from this deployment. Our soldiers have been operating under very strict behavioral guidelines for 3 decades. Some of them might need time to remember how to interact politely with alien species. The way she said politely made several delegates shiver. What kind of soldiers are we talking about? Asked Mordan. Chen was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried an emotion that hadn't been there before. Not warmth, not coldness, something that might have been regret. The kind that other humans are afraid of, she said simply. The chamber fell silent again. In the distance, alarms continued to wail as more reports came in from Altair. Entire cities going dark, refugee ships fleeing into deep space, an ancient civilization being erased by weapons that turned living beings into soup. But somehow, the reports from Altair seemed less frightening than the small human woman who had just informed them that humanity had been hiding its true strength for 30 years. Chen reached the human delegation and whispered something to her aide. The young man's face went pale, but he nodded and began typing on his communication device. What happens now? Asked Council Leader Mordan. Chen looked up from her aide's work. Now we wait 6 hours and see if the galaxy remembers why our planet was classified as a death world in the first place. She sat down in her chair with the same calm grace she had shown throughout the entire conversation. But every other delegate in the chamber noticed that her hands never stopped moving. She was typing message after message on her personal device, and each message seemed to make her more relaxed while making everyone else more nervous. Outside the chamber windows, the stars looked the same as they always had, peaceful, eternal, unchanged. But everyone in the room knew that something fundamental had just shifted in the balance of galactic power. The humans had taken off their mask and no one was quite sure what they would find underneath. The countdown to Protocol 7 had begun. The first sign that everything had changed came at exactly 0347 Galactic Standard Time. Every deep space sensor array in the Confederation suddenly detected massive energy signatures appearing throughout their space. Ships were decloaking, hundreds of them. Ships that shouldn't exist. Captain Veltar was monitoring the sensor station on Outpost Gamma when his screen lit up like a festival display. 12 massive vessels had just appeared out of nowhere, sitting in orbit around his station. He had been watching empty space 30 seconds earlier. This is impossible, he whispered to his communications officer. Ships that size can't just hide. The communications officer, a young Terran named Rodriguez, looked uncomfortable. Sir, those are human vessels. Human vessels. Veltar laughed nervously. Humans don't have ships that big. The treaty limits them to— The treaty is suspended, sir, Rodriguez interrupted. Protocol 7 is active. Veltar's laughter died in his throat. He stared at the sensor readings again. The largest ship showed as nearly 2 kilometers long. That was bigger than most space stations. The energy readings suggested weapon systems that could crack planets. Get me Admiral Kethavar, Veltar ordered. But Admiral Kethavar was having his own problems. His command center had been receiving reports for the past hour that made no sense. Human military installations were appearing on worlds where intelligence said no installations existed. Weapons platforms were activating in asteroid fields that had been surveyed and found empty just months ago. How long have they been there? Kethavar demanded, staring at a hologram showing a massive military complex on the supposedly uninhabited moon of Kepler 438b. The construction looks at least 20 years old, his intelligence chief replied. Maybe older. The stealth technology is unlike anything we've seen. 20 years, Kethavar repeated slowly. They've been building a secret military for 20 years. His aide approached nervously. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. General Marcus Torres is requesting permission to brief the Combined Military Command. Kethavar had never heard of General Torres. That should have been his first warning. The briefing room filled with holographic projections as the general began his presentation. Torres was a large human, even by their standards, with gray hair and scars that suggested extensive combat experience. He spoke in a flat, emotionless tone that somehow made his words more frightening than any shouting could have. The Zephyrian Empire consists of approximately 1,200 worlds, Torres began. Current population estimated at 2 trillion beings. Military strength includes approximately 50,000 vessels and 6 billion ground troops. The numbers were staggering. The combined Confederation military was maybe 1/10 that size. Zephyrian biological weapons have proven effective against all known Confederation species, Torres continued. Casualty rates in initial engagements approached 90%. Traditional military response is inadvisable. Then how do you propose to stop them? Asked Admiral Kethvar. Torres paused the presentation and looked directly at the Admiral. We're not going to stop them, Admiral. We're going to erase them. The casual way he said erase made several officers step backward. The 1st Terran Shock Division will deploy to Kepler 442b in 2 hours, Torres announced. This world currently hosts approximately 50,000 Zephyrian ground troops. Our insertion force will consist of 500 soldiers. 500 against 50,000? Admiral Yexvan of the Vegan Defense Force sounded shocked. That's suicide. No, sir, Torres replied with the same flat tone. That's Tuesday. He touched a control, and the presentation shifted to show equipment and vehicles that looked like they belonged in a nightmare. Armor that seemed to absorb light. Weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. Vehicles that moved without making sound. The Shock Division specializes in hostile environment warfare, Torres explained. They are trained and equipped to operate in conditions that would kill most beings within minutes. Chemical weapons, biological weapons, radiation, extreme temperatures, toxic atmospheres, these are their preferred operating conditions. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Human soldiers who treated deadly environments as normal working conditions. What about support? Asked Admiral Kethvar. Medical supply communication? Shock Division operates independently for up to 6 months without resupply, Torres answered. They carry their own medical facilities, manufacture their own ammunition, and maintain their own communication networks. Support would actually slow them down. He switched to a new display showing planetary assault procedures. The alien officers watched in growing horror as Torres described tactics that violated every convention of civilized warfare. Step 1 is atmospheric denial, Torres said, pointing to a diagram. We release modified atmospheric processors that make the air unbreathable for Zephyrian physiology while remaining harmless to human troops. That's chemical warfare, protested Admiral Yexvan. No, sir, Torres corrected. Chemical warfare implies the use of artificial toxins. We simply modify the atmospheric composition to favor human biology over Zephyrian biology. The air becomes too rich in oxygen and too low in methane for Zephyrian survival. The distinction seemed meaningless to everyone except Torres. Step 2 is psychological warfare, he continued. Shock Division troops are equipped with devices that broadcast on Zephyrian neural frequencies. The signals don't cause physical damage, but they do trigger species-wide instinctive fear responses. What kind of fear responses? Asked Kethvar. Torres smiled for the first time since the briefing began. It was not a pleasant expression. Zephyrians evolved as hive insects on a world with large predators, he explained. Their instinctive fear response involves complete paralysis, followed by involuntary evacuation of their bodily fluids. A single human soldier with the right equipment can incapacitate an entire Zephyrian battalion without firing a shot. The alien officers exchanged uncomfortable glances. This was beginning to sound less like warfare and more like extermination. Step 3 is occupation and consolidation, Torres finished. We secure strategic locations and wait for Zephyrian command to surrender or withdraw. And if they don't surrender? Asked Admiral Kethvar. Torres shrugged. Then we implement step 4, which is sterilization protocols. The way he said it made the room temperature seem to drop 10 degrees. Admiral Kethvar cleared his throat nervously. General Torres, may I ask what military experience the Shock Division has? How many combat deployments? Torres checked his wrist device. The 1st Shock Division has been operational for 27 years. They have conducted approximately 300 combat missions. 300 missions. Kethvar sounded shocked. Against whom? The galaxy has been at peace. Torres looked at him with an expression that might have been pity. The galaxy has been at peace, Admiral, because the Shock Division has been very good at their job. He gathered his materials and prepared to leave. Deployment begins in 90 minutes. Torres announced. I recommend keeping your monitoring stations at maximum range. Shock division operations can be disturbing to observe. As he walked toward the door, Torres paused and looked back at the assembled alien officers. One final note, he said. The soldiers you're about to see in action have been following strict rules of engagement for 3 decades. Rules designed to minimize collateral damage and preserve civilian populations. Those rules have been suspended under Protocol 7. He left the briefing room in silence. The alien officers sat motionless for several minutes, trying to process what they had just heard. Finally, Admiral Kethvar spoke in a whisper. What have we done? The first footage came from a Vegan news crew that had been documenting the Zephyrian occupation of Kepler 442b. They were filming the massive alien fortifications when something impossible happened in the background of their shot. A human soldier walked out of a cloud of green poison gas. The gas was thick enough to dissolve metal. The Zephyrians had been using it to clear out underground bunkers where civilians were hiding. No living thing should have been able to survive in that toxic fog for more than a few seconds, but the human just walked through it like it was morning mist. The camera followed him as he strolled across the battlefield. His armor was black and seemed to absorb light like a hole in space. He carried a weapon that hummed with energy and moved with the casual confidence of someone taking a walk in a park. Behind him, more humans emerged from the gas cloud. Dozens of them, then hundreds. The Zephyrian soldiers started screaming. This is Correspondent Velshan reporting from Kepler 442b. The news crew leader whispered into his microphone. I am witnessing something that I cannot explain. Human soldiers are advancing through a Class 5 toxic environment without protection. The Zephyrian defenders appear to be in full retreat. The camera shook as the news crew tried to get closer. Through the lens, they could see Zephyrian troops abandoning their positions and running toward their ships. Some were firing their weapons, but the energy beams seemed to disappear when they hit the human soldiers. The human armor appears to be absorbing directed energy weapons. Velshan continued. I can see at least 2 humans who have taken direct hits from Zephyrian plasma cannons. They are still advancing. One of the humans turned toward the camera and waved. The gesture was almost friendly, except for the fact that he was standing in the middle of a chemical weapon attack. While enemy soldiers fled in terror around him, transmission cut to static 30 seconds later. Similar footage began appearing from across the combat zone. Human soldiers operating in environments that should have killed them instantly, walking through radiation fields, swimming through acid rain, standing in the vacuum of space with nothing but their armor. But the environmental resistance was just the beginning. Captain Elena Vasquez led her squad through the ruins of New Mumbai, the largest city on Kepler 442b. The Zephyrians had hit it with every biological weapon in their arsenal. The air was thick with toxins that could dissolve bone. The water was contaminated with viruses that rewrote DNA. The soil itself had been turned into a biological weapon. Beautiful weather today, Vasquez said cheerfully into her communication device. Light chemical load, minimal biological activity. Perfect conditions for a morning stroll. Her squad laughed at the joke. They were walking through an environment that could kill most known life forms in minutes, and they were treating it like a pleasant vacation. Contact ahead, reported Sergeant Kim from point position. Looks like a full Zephyrian battalion dug in around the government complex. Vasquez checked her scanner. 3,000 enemy soldiers with heavy weapons and fortified positions. Under normal circumstances, it would take a full division to assault that kind of defensive line. Standard approach? Asked Corporal Martinez. Negative, Vasquez replied. Let's try the new psychological warfare package. I want to test it under combat conditions. She activated a device on her belt. Immediately, every Zephyrian in a 2-kilometer radius began making high-pitched keening sounds. The noise was picked up by embedded news reporters who were monitoring the battle from orbit. What is that sound? Asked one of the reporters. Zephyrian fear response, explained their human military advisor, a mild-mannered man named Dr. Peterson. Captain Vasquez is broadcasting on neural frequencies that trigger their instinctive terror reactions. That sounds like psychological torture. Dr. Peterson shrugged. It's completely harmless. The soldiers will recover normal brain function within a few hours. They'll just be unable to fight while the effect lasts. On the surface, Vasquez and her squad walked unopposed through the Zephyrian defensive positions. 3,000 enemy soldiers lay curled in fetal positions, making terrified noises and evacuating their bodily fluids. Some were trying to crawl away, but their fear response had paralyzed their motor functions. Objective secured, Vasquez reported. Beginning facility search for civilian refugees. Any resistance? Asked command. Negative. The Zephyrians appear to be taking an involuntary nap. The footage from this engagement spread across the galaxy within hours. Alien populations watched in shock as human soldiers casually strolled through enemy positions, while their opponents writhed in terror. But the worst was yet to come. On the third day of the operation, the Zephyrians deployed their ultimate weapon, a biological agent that attacked the nervous system of any carbon-based life form. It had been designed as a planet killer, something that could sterilize entire worlds of any living thing larger than bacteria. They released it into the atmosphere of Kepler 442b from orbit. The weapon worked exactly as designed. Within hours, every plant on the planet was dead. Every animal, every insect, every microorganism. The entire biosphere was reduced to sterile rock and toxic soup. Everything died except the humans. The footage from this event was captured by automated monitoring satellites. They showed human soldiers continuing their operations while walking through landscapes that looked like the surface of hell. Dead forests, poisoned rivers, air thick with toxins that could kill most known life in seconds. The humans kept working. "This is unprecedented," whispered Dr. Kelvin, the Confederation's leading expert on biological warfare. He was watching the satellite feeds with growing horror. That weapon was designed to kill everything. How are they still alive? His human colleague, Dr. Sarah Martinez, looked uncomfortable. "Earth is a death world," she said quietly. "We evolved in conditions that most species would consider lethal. Our immune systems are biological resilience. We're built to survive things that kill other life forms." "But this is impossible," Dr. Kelvin protested. "No species could survive that level of biological contamination." Dr. Martinez was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was very soft. "No known species," she corrected. On Kepler 442b, Captain Vasquez and her squad were securing the last Zephyrian command post. The enemy soldiers had sealed themselves inside a bunker and were waiting to die. Their ultimate weapon had failed, and they knew that surrender was their only option. "This is Captain Vasquez to Zephyrian Command," she broadcast on their communication frequency. "You have 30 seconds to surrender unconditionally, or we begin implementing sterilization protocols." The Zephyrian commander's reply came through broken sobs. "What kind of monsters are you?" Vasquez considered the question seriously. "We're the monsters that other monsters are afraid of," she answered finally. "But we're also the monsters that protect the innocent. Your choice is simple: surrender now, or discover why your ancestors developed an instinctive fear of predators." The bunker doors opened 23 seconds later. Across the galaxy, civilian populations huddled around their communication devices, watching footage of human soldiers walking through hell itself with casual confidence. The reports were spreading faster than anyone could control them. Humanity had revealed its true nature, and the universe was remembering why it had been afraid of the dark for so long. The age of human restraint was over. The revelations began with a routine investigation. Admiral Kethver had ordered a survey of human military installations that were now declassified, under Protocol 7. What the survey teams found made him wish he had never asked the question. The first discovery was on Titan, one of Saturn's moons. The facility was listed as a research station in all official records. The survey team found laboratories that stretched for kilometers underground, housing experiments that defied comprehension. Dr. Yuki Tanaka met the survey team at the entrance with a warm smile and a cup of tea. She was a small, elderly human woman who looked like someone's grandmother. The survey team relaxed when they saw her. "Welcome to the Evolutionary Acceleration Laboratory," she said cheerfully. "I'm sorry about the secrecy, but our work here tends to make people nervous." The vegan scientist leading the survey team, Dr. Veltar, accepted the tea gratefully. "What kind of research do you conduct here?" "Oh, the usual," Dr. Tanaka replied. "Accelerated evolution, biological warfare countermeasures, ecosystem modification. Nothing too exciting." She led them through corridors lined with containment units. Each unit held something that made the survey team step back in alarm. Creatures that had never existed in nature. plants that moved with obvious intelligence, organisms that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. This specimen here, Dr. Tanaka said, pointing to a containment unit holding what looked like a tree made of metal, was developed as a terraforming tool. We can plant it on a dead world, and within 50 years it will create a complete ecosystem suitable for human habitation. Dr. Veltar stared at the metal tree in horror. You can create entire ecosystems? Oh yes, Dr. Tanaka replied. We can also destroy them, of course. This other specimen, she pointed to what looked like ordinary grass, can consume any organic material and convert it to fertile soil, very useful for cleaning up after biological weapons attacks. The survey team was beginning to understand that they were looking at weapons disguised as tools. How long have you been conducting this research? Asked Dr. Veltar. About 35 years, Dr. Tanaka said. We started shortly after Earth joined the Confederation. We wanted to make sure we could protect our new friends from any biological threats they might encounter. She showed them to the next laboratory. This one contained what appeared to be a small jungle, except that the plants were moving in patterns that suggested coordination. This is our ecosystem defense project, Dr. Tanaka explained. We've modified these plants to recognize and neutralize hostile biological agents. If someone were to attack a world with biological weapons, we could deploy this ecosystem to counter the attack within hours. Counter how? Asked Dr. Veltar nervously. The plants produce targeted antibodies that neutralize specific biological weapons, Dr. Tanaka said. They can also produce countervirus that turn biological weapons back on their creators. It's really quite elegant, the way she said elegant, while describing weapons that could reverse biological attacks made the survey team very uncomfortable. But the discoveries on Titan were just the beginning. On Pluto, the survey team found manufacturing facilities that produced weapons no one had ever seen before, devices that could rewrite matter at the quantum level, ammunition that phased through normal matter, but became solid when it detected specific biological signatures, armor that existed in a state of quantum uncertainty until activated. The facility director, Colonel Martinez, gave them a tour with obvious pride. This is our quantum disruption cannon, he said, pointing to a weapon that hurt to look at directly. It can delete objects from reality by severing their connection to space-time. Very clean, no radiation, no residue. The target simply stops existing. Delete objects from reality? Dr. Veltar's voice was barely a whisper. Oh yes, Colonel Martinez replied. We can target anything from a single molecule up to a moon-sized object. The energy requirements are substantial but manageable. He showed them to the next display. This is our temporal displacement weapon. It moves the target backwards in time by approximately 0.3 seconds, which causes them to occupy the same space as their past self. The resulting paradox eliminates the target from the timeline. The survey team stood in shocked silence. These weren't just advanced weapons. They were violations of the fundamental laws of physics. But perhaps the most disturbing discovery came on Europa, where the survey team found the Strategic Threat Assessment Division. This facility contained detailed intelligence files on every major species in the galaxy, files that revealed how much humanity really knew about their allies. Director Williams, a cheerful human woman in her 50s, walked them through the archives with obvious enthusiasm. We've been monitoring potential threats to galactic peace for decades, she explained. Every species, every government, every military organization. We like to be prepared. She pulled up a file labeled Vegan Defense Force, Strategic Analysis. Dr. Veltar read his own species file with growing horror. It contained detailed battle plans for conquering vegan space within 72 hours. Biological agents designed specifically to target vegan physiology, psychological warfare techniques based on vegan cultural weaknesses. You've been planning to invade our worlds? He asked. Planning to defend against invasion, Director Williams corrected, though I suppose the methods would be the same. We found that the best way to prevent a war is to be thoroughly prepared to win it. She showed them files for every major species in the Confederation. Each file contained detailed invasion plans, biological weapons, psychological warfare techniques, and contingency strategies. Humanity had been preparing for war with everyone just in case. How long have you been gathering this intelligence? Asked Dr. Veltar. Since the day we joined the Confederation, Director Williams replied. It seemed prudent to understand our new neighbors. Knowledge is the foundation of peace, after all. The most chilling file was labeled Total War Scenarios. It contained plans for winning a conflict against the entire Confederation simultaneously. The document was over 10,000 pages long and covered everything from fleet tactics to biological warfare to economic manipulation. This suggests you could defeat all of us at once, Dr. Veltar said weakly. Director Williams nodded. Theoretically, yes, though we'd much prefer not to. War is so messy and we genuinely like most of you. The final revelation came when the survey teams were preparing to leave. Dr. Veltar asked the question that had been bothering him since the investigation began. How long have you been protecting us? Director Williams checked her records. Officially? Since Protocol 7 was activated 3 days ago. Unofficially? Since about 6 months after we joined the Confederation. She pulled up another file, this one labeled Threat Elimination Log. We've neutralized approximately 237 potential threats to Confederation security over the past 30 years, she said. Mostly small things. Pirate fleets, terrorist organizations, rogue AI systems, interdimensional invaders, things like that. Interdimensional invaders? Dr. Veltar's voice cracked. Oh yes, they show up every few years, Director Williams said casually. Very hostile. Tend to eat entire star systems. We've developed quite effective countermeasures. The last invasion attempt was about 8 months ago. They won't be trying again. Dr. Veltar stared at her in shock. We never heard about any invasions. Director Williams smiled. That's rather the point. We handle these situations quietly to avoid causing panic. The general population doesn't need to know about every threat that gets eliminated. As the survey teams prepared their reports, one fact became impossible to ignore. Humanity hadn't been contained by the Confederation's restrictions. They had been protecting the Confederation from threats too dangerous for anyone else to handle. The galaxy's guardians had been hiding in plain sight for 30 years, and now everyone knew it. The Zephyrian homeworld of Zerithia had never known defeat. For 800 years, the Empire had conquered world after world, species after species. Their capital city of Golden. Spires housed 2 billion beings who considered themselves the apex of galactic civilization. Now, their leaders cowered in underground bunkers, while human soldiers walked through their streets like tourists. Emperor Zelthak watched the security feeds with growing despair. 3 weeks ago, he had commanded fleets that could shatter planets. Today, he was hiding in a bunker 3 kilometers underground while humans strolled through his palace gardens. Report, he commanded his military advisor. General Vextar's mandibles clicked nervously. The humans have occupied all major population centers. They arrived 6 hours ago. No shots were fired. How many humans? Approximately 50,000 troops, my lord. 50,000? The Emperor's voice rose to a shriek. We have 6 billion soldiers on this world. Why haven't we attacked? General Vextar was quiet for a long moment. My lord, the soldiers refuse to leave their barracks. They say the humans smell like death. The Emperor stared at his advisor in confusion. Smell like death? The humans are broadcasting something on neural frequencies, the general explained. It triggers our species' deepest instinctive fears. Soldiers who encounter humans directly report overwhelming terror, followed by paralysis. Many have died of fear-induced heart failure. Our ultimate biological weapon failed completely, he continued. The planet killer we deployed on Kepler 442b had no effect on human troops. They continued fighting in an environment that killed every other form of life. The Emperor closed all 4 of his eyes. What do the humans want? Unconditional surrender, my lord. Complete disarmament. Dissolution of the Empire. War crimes tribunals for all military leadership. And if we refuse? General Vexitar activated a holographic display showing the orbital space around Zerithia. 12 massive human vessels hung in the void like dark angels of death. The humans have informed us that refusal will result in what they call sterilization protocols, the general said. Based on intelligence from the battlefront, this involves the complete elimination of our species. The Emperor stared at the human ships. Each one was larger than his entire remaining fleet. Weapons that could crack moons pointed down at his world with casual menace. How long do we have to decide? 37 minutes, my lord. Meanwhile, on the surface, Captain Elena Vasquez was conducting the most polite occupation in galactic history. Her troops had taken control of all strategic locations without firing a single shot. The local population was too terrified to resist. and the military had simply collapsed at the first sight of human soldiers. "This is remarkably civilized," observed Ambassador Chen, who had arrived that morning to oversee surrender negotiations. "Usually planetary occupations involve more destruction." "The Zephyrians are surprisingly reasonable when they're properly motivated," Vasquez replied. "Fear is an excellent diplomatic tool." They walked through the Imperial Palace, past priceless artifacts and works of art that represented 8 centuries of galactic conquest. Zephyrian servants cowered in corners as they passed, making high-pitched keening noises that indicated extreme terror. "I feel somewhat guilty about this," Chen admitted. "They're clearly traumatized." "They'll recover," Vasquez said. "Physical trauma heals. The psychological effects of our neural broadcasts fade within a few days. Much more humane than actually killing them." They entered the throne room where Ambassador Chen would receive the Emperor's surrender. The massive chamber was designed to intimidate visitors with its scale and grandeur. Golden columns stretched toward a ceiling painted with scenes of Zephyrian victory over other species. "Ironic," Chen observed, looking at the artwork. "All those conquered worlds, and it ends here with 50,000 humans walking in unopposed." 23 minutes later, Emperor Zelthak emerged from his bunker with a small entourage of advisors. He moved slowly, like an old being carrying the weight of centuries. His golden robes, once symbols of power, now seemed like costume jewelry. "Ambassador Chen of Earth," he said formally. "I am Emperor Zelthak of the Zephyrian Empire. I am here to discuss terms of surrender." Chen bowed politely. "Your Imperial Majesty, I appreciate your willingness to end this conflict peacefully." The Emperor's compound eyes fixed on her with obvious effort. Even being in the same room as a human was causing him visible distress. "What are your terms?" he asked. Chen activated a holographic display. "Complete disarmament of all military forces, dissolution of the imperial government, establishment of local democratic councils on all occupied worlds, war crimes tribunals for military leadership responsible for biological weapons use, reparations to victims of imperial conquest, and our people will be free to govern themselves peacefully under Confederation oversight. We have no interest in ruling your species, only in ensuring you never again threaten other civilizations." The Emperor was quiet for several minutes. Finally, he spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "What happens if we refuse these terms?" Chen's expression didn't change, but somehow the temperature in the room seemed to drop. "Then we implement total sterilization protocols," she said simply. "Your species will be removed from the galaxy as a threat to peaceful civilizations." "Removed?" "Extinct," Chen clarified. "We have the capability to eliminate every Zephyrian in the galaxy within 72 hours. It would be thorough, efficient, and irreversible." The casual way she discussed genocide made the Emperor's legs give out. He collapsed into his throne with a sound like breaking crystal. "You would commit genocide?" Chen considered the question seriously. "We would prefer not to, but if your species cannot coexist peacefully with others, then yes, we would eliminate the threat permanently. We've done it before." "Before?" "The Devourer swarms, the Machine Collective, the Psionic Dominion. None of them exist anymore. The galaxy is more peaceful without them." The Emperor stared at her in horror. Those were legendary threats from galactic history, monsters that had terrorized entire star sectors before mysteriously disappearing. "That was you?" "That was us," Chen confirmed. "We've been cleaning up the galaxy's neighborhood for 30 years. Usually we work quietly, but sometimes situations require more direct action." She gestured toward the holographic terms of surrender. "This is your choice, Your Imperial Majesty. Peaceful coexistence under reasonable restrictions or complete elimination. We're prepared for either outcome." The Emperor signed the surrender documents with shaking hands. 6 days later, Ambassador Chen stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council. The chamber was packed with representatives from every member species, all waiting to hear how the galactic balance of power had shifted. "The Zephyrian Empire has surrendered unconditionally," Chen announced. "All biological weapons have been secured or destroyed. Imperial military forces have been disbanded. Democratic governments are being established on all former Imperial worlds." Council leader Mordan cleared her throat nervously. "Ambassador Chen, the Confederation appreciates humanity's intervention in this crisis. However, there are questions about the future of galactic security." "I'm listening," Chen replied. "The capabilities humanity demonstrated during this conflict, They far exceed anything we imagined possible. The weapons, the technology, the tactical abilities. How long have you possessed these capabilities? Chen smiled. It was the same smile she had worn when first announcing Protocol 7. Since the day we joined the Confederation, she said, we've always been exactly what we are now. The only thing that's changed is that we're no longer pretending to be something else. And what happens now? Chen looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from dozens of species. Now we go back to the way things were, she said. Humanity will resume its previous roles as engineers, medics, diplomats, and scientists. Our military will return to its previous limitations. Protocol 7 will be deactivated. But everyone knows the truth now, protested Delegate Yexvan. We know what you're really capable of. Yes, Chen agreed. Everyone knows that the limitations we accepted were voluntary, not mandatory. Everyone knows that we chose to be helpful neighbors rather than terrifying overlords. Everyone knows that we've been protecting the galaxy from threats too dangerous for anyone else to handle. She paused and looked directly at Council Leader Morden, and everyone knows that we could change our minds if we wanted to, she continued. The choice, as always, is yours. You can treat us as valued allies and trusted friends, or you can discover why your ancestors evolved an instinctive fear of apex predators. The chamber fell silent. Outside the windows, human ships were already beginning to fade back into stealth mode, disappearing from sensors as if they had never existed. But everyone in the room knew they were still there, waiting, watching, protecting their friends from the darkness between the stars.